Are you having a hard time getting listeners to your podcast? Is the bulk of your time spent on content creation, leaving you very little time for marketing or promotion? If you answered yes to either of those questions, then you should do what I did and reach out to Pod Boost Hub on Upwork. Pod Boost Hub brings you 100% organic promotion services. Pod Boost works around your budget and your needs. Contact them today on Upwork or even on Facebook. Pod Boost Hub. Your content, your audience, their responsibility. Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to elevate your energy game? Let me introduce you to Dubby, the energy drink brand on a mission to help you be better. Dubby is designed to give you the boost you need without the jitters or crashes that accompany many of the drinks supplied by Big Energy. Their drinks are sugar-free, calorie-free, and free from artificial colors or dyes. They launched with just one flavor, but thanks to the support of their loyal customers, they've grown to offer over 15 unique custom-made flavors. So if you're looking for a clean, delicious energy boost that helps you power through your day, look no further than Dubby. Join the movement and experience the difference for yourself. Visit WGG and use the code WW1POD for a 10% discount on your order. Remember, with Dubby, it's all about being better, one sip at a time. Alright, bills are paid. Let's get on with the show. I'm Henny B, and welcome to the World War I Stories podcast, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it. Some scenes in these stories may be too graphic for sensitive listeners, so listener discretion is advised. Today's episode, The Line Between Us. The building reeked of oil and dust as they entered. Even after years on the job, that first breath always hit Wilbur square in the face, sharp and heavy, a slap of railhouse air after the clean softness of spring outside. He glanced at his younger brother and nodded. Hope they've got all the rails loaded. Would be a shame if we waste the day because they didn't finish, Horace replied. They moved deeper into the rail house, a wide brick-walled shell built for machines bigger than men, the kind of place Wilbur knew like the back of his hand, but still respected. High ceilings let in cold light through soot-streaked windows, and the big doors were already cracked, open to the yard, waiting for something to move. Most days, the place was meant for repairs, a home for engines and cars too battered to roll. But this season, with the frost still in the ground and the coastline soft with melt, they'd been using it to stockpile fresh rails and ties. Good ones, too, kept out of the wet so they wouldn't rot or twist. The rails and ties flanked the main line that ran through the middle of the structure, stacked in orderly rows that made loading easy. A loaded flat car sat hitched at the center, wheels locked, waiting. Wilbur climbed up at the rear and ran a gloved hand over the steel. Each length was banded tight with iron straps, wedged in with cut lumber to keep the whole load from shifting. 80-pound rail, he muttered, noting the weight by feel. Fresh grind on the edges. Horace leaned against the car, eyeing the ties. Not bad. Looks like they tapped them in tighter than last week. Wilbur gave a slow nod. Still got gaps, though, if the load shifts on a downgrade. We ride the gravel, Horace finished, smirking. They walked the length of the car together, scanning for anything loose. Tie plates, spikes, a stray fish plate. Wilbur spotted a crate of joint bars lashed at the far end. The rope looked loose, wet from the morning thaw. He tightened it out of habit, gave it a tug, and glanced towards the engine. We'll ride the second car. Keeps us close, but clear the engine heat. Horace grinned, always thinking 2 steps ahead. Before Wilbur could answer, a voice rang out overhead. Wilbur! Horace! They both turned. Clancy, coal-streaked and panting, jogged towards them, wiping his hand on a soot-blackened rag. The boss wants to see you. Both of you. Now. Wilbur raised an eyebrow. What for? Clancy shrugged. Didn't say, just told me to fetch you. Horace jumped down with a hollow thud. Hope it's not about last week's busted loader. Wilbur dropped down beside him. Well, there's only one way to find out. The office above the yard was cramped and close, the kind of place where coal dust settled in the corners no matter how often it was swept. Wilbur stepped through the doorway first, Horace just behind, and both of them paused. Their boss, Mr. Kincaid, was seated behind the desk, but it wasn't just him. To his right stood 3 men in uniform, 2 in dark wool adorned with what looked like corporal stripes, and 1, taller, older, with bars gleaming beneath his greatcoat. Wilbur didn't speak, neither did Horace. The air in the room felt thick, as if something had been said just before they arrived. "Come in, boys," Kincaid said, his voice gruffer than usual. "This here is Captain Alton and his men, Corporals McRae and Thompson." The captain gave a polite nod. The corporals said nothing. Kincaid stood, gesturing with an open hand. "These are the Wainwright boys, 2 of my best, come from railroad stock. Their daddy worked this line before them, and their granddad before that. They started learning the ropes when they were 12. Now look at 'em. Wilbur's 20, Horace just turned 18. Wilbur shifted his weight. Compliments from Kincaid always carried an edge, but this one felt heavier. He glanced toward the captain, who stepped forward with his hands clasped behind his back. "Young men," the captain said, "as you are surely aware, Britain is at war, and so are we. It's a new kind of war, not just trenches and rifles, but supply chains, troop movement, and logistics. We need more than soldiers. We need railmen." Wilbur felt Horace straighten beside him, a subtle shift. He didn't like where this was going. "I appreciate the need, sir," Wilbur said carefully, "but our folks aren't as strong as they used to be. Ma's been ill on and off. We keep things running back home." Horace added, "And we got crews out past Burnaby still counting on us to finish that spur by month's end." Captain Alton gave a small smile, not unkind but not sympathetic either. "I understand," he said. "Unfortunately, it's not a request." He reached into a leather satchel resting near the desk and withdrew 2 sheets of paper, blank conscription notices. Wilbur's chest tightened. The captain placed the notices on the desk, produced a pen, and then, slowly and without ceremony, he removed the cap and leaned over. In a practiced, elegant script, he wrote Wilbur Wainwright on the first notice and Horace Wainwright on the second. The ink sank into the paper like it had always been meant to be there. "You'll report to the assembly yard at 0600 tomorrow," the captain said, capping the pen. "Uniforms, rail orders, transport, everything will be issued on site." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Kincaid cleared his throat. "I didn't know until this morning," he said, "but they asked for names and I gave them the best ones I had." Wilbur looked at his boss, then at the forms, then down at his own boots. His throat was dry. He nodded once, not because he agreed, but because there was nothing left to say. Outside, the whistle of a distant engine echoed through the yard, long, low, and lonesome. The rain had turned steady hours ago. Not a storm, just that cold, miserable kind that soaked through uniforms and made boots feel like they weighed 20 pounds apiece. The flatbed truck sat low in the mud, straining under the weight of cut rails, its wood bed creaking each time someone shifted up top. They worked fast now, 7 men in total, 3 up on the truck using tongs to lift the rail, 4 on the ground, Wilbur among them, ready to receive it on their shoulders and carry it to the fresh ballast. It wasn't the safest method, but after 6 months in France, they'd learned safe didn't win you time, and time was everything when the guns were close. Firelight threw long shadows through the wet fog, hooded and low to avoid drawing enemy attention. Their sight was within shelling range. It had been hit last week. Might be again tonight. Wilbur adjusted the scarf at his neck and stepped into position. "Rail up," someone called from the truck. He looked up. The rail was already tipping forward, wrestled into motion by the men above, tongs clamped on either end. They lowered it just enough for the ground team to shoulder it. Wilbur crouched slightly, planted his boots, and braced. The cold steel hit him square across the right shoulder and back, heavier than it looked, wet from rain and half-caked in old mud. "Hold," someone called. The plan was always the same. Get under it, balance it, and then let the three on the truck jump down and help carry it the rest of the way. Wilbur grit his teeth and leaned in. Then came the whistle. It wasn't one of theirs. It was the long, rising scream of incoming artillery. Close. Too close. The world didn't pause. It just snapped. The shell landed somewhere to the north, but the concussion hit like a hammer. Someone yelled. A man on the truck slipped. One hand lost control of the rail tongs. The rail bucked. "Drop it!" Wilbur turned to move. Too late. The steel slipped, fell, and drove down across his chest with a thunderous, unyielding weight. Pain exploded through him, blinding, crushing, the kind that emptied the lungs and stole every inch of sound from the world. He collapsed backwards into the mud. His hands twitched, but couldn't reach. His legs were water. Rain pelted his face, and all he could hear was the sudden absence. The shouting had stopped. No, not stopped. Muffled. Boots slammed nearby, then hands. Dozens, it seemed. The rail shifted. Someone was yelling his name. Horace. That was Horace's voice. Closer now. Angry, scared, wild. Wilbur wanted to tell him he was fine, that it was just the wind knocked out of him, but his mouth wouldn't open. His chest felt like it had caved in. The rail lifted. He felt it rise off his ribs, but it didn't matter. The cold had already gotten in. Not the rain cold, the other kind, the deep kind, the kind you don't walk off. Horace was there now, shouting something he couldn't catch. Other hands moved around him. Everything was blurred. Rain, faces, light. His vision flickered. Wilbur blinked once. Then everything went dark. The porch creaked under his chair every time he shifted. Not much, just enough to ease the pressure in his ribs. Not that it ever truly helped. The ache was always there, dull and constant, like the memory of something broken that hadn't quite set right. Wilbur sat in a blanket despite the warmth of the day, his breath still too shallow for comfort. Every cough came with a sharp reminder that his chest had once been folded under the weight of iron and war. Across the porch, his mother snapped the dry ends off a bowl of green beans with methodical precision. His father sat beside her, pipe unlit, staring at the trees across the yard like they might offer news. They didn't talk much unless someone had something to say. That was one thing war hadn't changed. Wilbur adjusted the pillow behind his back and watched the street. Kids darted past playing games. Somewhere down the road, someone was hammering something. Maybe a new fence, maybe repairs from the last windstorm. Either way, it felt very far away. "How was your sleep?" his mother asked, not looking up. Wilbur shrugged. "Didn't much." His father nodded slowly like he expected that answer. A robin landed on the railing nearby, chirped twice, then flitted off again. The world had gone on turning without him. He was back in it now, but not quite part of it. They hadn't heard from Horace in 3 weeks. That wasn't unusual. Not really. But silence had a different weight these days. His mother stopped snapping beans. "He'll write soon." Wilbur didn't answer. He knew she wasn't really talking to him anyway. A breeze moved through the porch, rattling the newspaper beside his chair. Headlines half glimpsed. German push stalled. New offense expected. Casualties remain high. All blurred together. He tried to read once or twice, but his eyes never made it past the second paragraph. The war was still happening, and Horace was still in it. That was all that mattered. He shifted again, the pain flaring, and closed his eyes. The birds, the hammering, the breeze. It all drifted around him like a world he no longer belonged to. He was home, but only halfway. It was the sound of the motor that made them all look up. Low, deliberate, not the familiar rattle of a delivery van or the sputter of a passing cart. This one was heavier, slower, a military vehicle. Wilbur shifted in his chair, instinct tightening his ribs before the pain even caught up. His father was already standing. His mother clutched the porch railing with one hand, the other pressed to her mouth. The car turned down their street like it had had a name already written on the envelope inside. Wilbur forced himself upright, hand braced on the armrest, jaw clenched against the egg. His mother reached to steady him without a word. They all watched. The car crept forward, not stopping, not yet. The wheels crunching over gravel like time itself. Then it passed. Right past their house. Not for them. Not today. The breath left Wilbur's lungs in a sharp, dry wheeze, but he didn't sit down. None of them did. The vehicle slowed. 4 houses down across the street. The Bailey's place. Mr. and Mrs. Bailey, churchgoers, good people. Their boy Charlie had been in France since last fall. A quiet kid, always polite. The car came to a stop at the curb. A soldier stepped out, uniform pressed, cap low, a single envelope in hand. Wilbur didn't realize he was holding his breath again until the pain in his ribs reminded him. The soldier climbed the porch and knocked. The door opened a moment later. Their little girl, Violet, standing there barefoot, maybe 7 or 8. She stared up at the man, then turned and looked to her father who had materialized in the doorway next to her. Wilbur watched as Mr. Bailey was handed and then opened the envelope and removed the paper within. His hand seemed to be shaking as he unfolded the page and read the words. His knees gave out like someone had pulled the bones from him. He didn't fall all the way, just sagged backwards into the frame of the door, one hand rising to his face as if he could somehow stop the truth from reaching his eyes. Wilbur's mother let out a soft sound. Not a sob, not a cry, just something caught between breath and grief. They didn't say anything. What could be said? Wilbur stared at the Bailey's front porch as if he could will it to rewind, as if the letter could go unread. He thought of Charlie's laugh. He'd heard it once outside church, gentle and too light for the trenches. And he thought, too, that he was inches away from coming home as a letter to his parents himself. And he thought of Horace, his little brother, left back in France. It had been a week since Wilbur dared to sit out on the porch again, but today it was raining and that comforted him. The chair creaked as he shifted, slowly trying not to press too hard against his ribs. The pain had dulled since his first week home, but there were still days when even breathing felt like work. Today was one of those days. His mother sat beside him, her knitting untouched in her lap. She wasn't looking at the yarn, hadn't been for minutes. Instead, she watched the street with a quiet stillness Wilbur had come to recognize. Not waiting for the postman, not listening to the birds, just watching. The breeze carried the scent of lilac from the yard, soft and sweet. Spring had dressed the neighborhood in color again. Everything had bloomed like the world hadn't been burying suns for the last 4 years. Then, that sound again, and a car rounding the corner. Wilbur's breath caught. It was military, the same make, the same shape, the kind that came with an envelope no one ever wanted. He sat forward as much as his body would let him. His mother did the same, her hand drifting to the silver cross at her neck. The car slowed, slower, and stopped. This time, 2 doors down. The Brysons. Wilbur felt something tighten in his chest that had nothing to do with his injuries. The soldier stepped out. Same uniform, same letter in hand. Mrs. Bryson answered the door herself. She was still in her apron, flour dusted on the front like she'd come straight from the kitchen. There was no hesitation. She opened the envelope on the porch. Her lips moved as she read. Then, nothing. She didn't fall, didn't scream. She just folded the letter back up with trembling hands and stepped inside, closing the door behind her like she'd merely fetched the milk. Wilbur heard his mother exhale, a long, shaking breath that even she hadn't known she'd been holding. Wilbur stared at the now closed door, the soldier walking back to his car. They didn't speak. The silence settled between them like dust. After a minute, Wilbur said, "That's two. This street's only so long." His mother looked at him, not scolding, not sorrowful, just tired. "He's still out there," she said softly. "That car is going to stop again somewhere." And she turned and walked into the house. Wilbur didn't reply. He didn't need to, because he knew what she hadn't said. It might be their turn next. The wind carried the kind of cold that clung to the sleeves and fingertips. Not winter yet, but close enough to remind them it was coming. Wilbur sat wrapped in a thick wool blanket, a chipped mug of hot tea resting in his lap. Beside him, his mother sipped from her own, steam rising in lazy spirals that caught the morning light. They didn't speak much. They hadn't needed to in a while. The silence between them had grown comfortable, like an old coat. Leaves skittered across the walk, red, yellow, and gold, their descent soft and soundless. One caught on the porch rail, twisting in the wind before dropping gently to the step. It had been months since they'd seen a military car roll down the street. Months since the last knock, the last envelope. Long enough for hope to feel like something you could hold again. Not loud, not certain, but there. A few letters had come from Horace. Not many, just enough. He was still out there, still moving somewhere behind the front. His handwriting had changed, sharper, more compressed, but the words were his. He always asked after the garden, after their mother, after Wilbur. This morning, Wilbur's ribs ached less than usual. He'd even made it out of bed without help, though he hadn't said anything about that. No sense in tempting fate. His mother cradled her mug in both hands, watching a line of smoke rise from a chimney down the street. He heard the engine before he saw the dust. It was faint at first, just a murmur at the edge of the morning stillness. But Wilbur's ears knew the sound by now. Low, even, too smooth to be a farm truck. His chest tightened. To his left, down the street, a shape began to form through the haze. A military vehicle. His breath caught. "Not again," he murmured. The car drew closer, the dust trailing behind it in lazy spirals. Wilbur set his mug down, rising to his feet, stiff, slow, already bracing. The vehicle began to slow, and then it stopped, right in front of their house. Wilbur turned away from the street, his back now to the vehicle, already in position to catch his mother if she fell. He didn't speak. His hands trembled. Tears stung the corner of his eyes, not for what was, but for what he was sure was coming. He heard the car door open, then close. Footsteps on gravel, heavy, measured, closer now. This is gonna be bad, he thought. He didn't turn. He couldn't. But then, emotion. His mother pushed past him, not collapsing but surging forward. Wilbur caught a glimpse of her hands flying to her face, tears already running down her cheeks. And then she ran, past him, down the stairs. He blinked, stunned as the moment blurred. He thought, just barely, that he heard her cry out a name. Horace! Wilbur turned slowly, just in time to see his brother, leaner now but smiling, wrap their mother in his arms and hold her like he never meant to let go. Wilbur didn't move at first. He watched as their mother buried her face against Horace's shoulder, her hands clutching the back of his coat like she thought he might vanish if she let go. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just held each other, still, shuddering, real. Then Horace looked up. Their eyes met. Wilbur's breath caught again, but not from fear this time. He took a step forward. Another, slowly down the porch steps, one hand still pressed to his side. Horace smiled, tired and crooked, but unmistakably his. He released their mother with care, like he didn't want to jostle her, and shifted his weight awkwardly as he turned to Wilbur. That's when Wilbur saw them. The crutches, tucked under Horace's arms, subtle, silent, one leg stiff as he stepped forward to meet him. Wilbur's throat tightened. Horace extended a hand. Heard you got yourself flattened by a rail. Wilbur let out a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob, and pulled his brother into a hug. Not too tight. Neither of them was quite whole. They stood like that for a moment. Two pieces of a broken world finding each other again on the steps of a house that hadn't yet had to mourn. Wilbur looked back at the porch and saw his mother sitting on the rail. Her tears couldn't hide the elation in her smile. Then he watched as his father stepped out of the house and froze mid-step. Wilbur smiled and thought to himself, it's Father's turn. This has been World War I Stories, Tales Beyond the Trenches. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show wherever you find this podcast, and don't forget to throw us a comment and a rating. We are on Facebook. Just search and like the official World War I Stories page. You can also join me on Blue Sky, where I go by the handle WW1Stories_HennyB. World War I Stories is now featured on Rabbit in Red Radio, with new episodes streaming Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. They also have all episodes available on demand. Visit Rabbit in Red Radio for this and many other independent podcasts. And last but not least, would you like your name read on the show? Become a producer by contributing to our Patreon at patreon.com/World War I Stories. I'm very grateful to everyone who downloads and listens to this show. I'm Henny B, and see you next time on World War I Stories.